2 Cosmologies Apparent Orphan Copyright 2025 KMichelCrabtree@gmail.com. Cosmologies 2 Cosmologies. 2 Cosmologies. Table of Contents Part 1. The Cosmology Divide. Introduction. Matter or Consciousness. Questioning Modern Materialism. The Big Bang and Atheistic Cosmology. Something versus Nothing. 2 Worldviews. Materialism as a Modern Religion. Science as Propaganda. Indoctrination through Education and Culture. The Subconscious Spread of Atheism and Nihilism. Part 2. The Ancient Cosmology of Something. Mind over Matter. The Human Mind as Reflection of God. The Hierarchy of Planes. Physical, Etheric, Astral, Mental. The Cosmology of Nothing. Evolution, Space, and Nihilism. Aristotle, Venice, and Political Roots of the Globe Model. Jesuits, Venetian Oligarchy, and the Cosmology of Control. The Virus of Nihilism. How Disbelief in Spirit Breeds Despair. Historical Manipulation and Timeline Distortion, Tartaria, Plato versus Aristotle, Metaphysics versus Materialism, Part 3, Science, NASA, and Spiritual Suppression. The Rise of Scientific Dogma, from Aristotelian Materialism to Modern Physics. NASA as Economic and Spiritual Theater. Freemasonry, Project Paperclip, and Occult Symbology. Space Travel as Mythology. The Religion of Science Fiction, Kubrick, Disney, and the Cinematic Creation of Belief. The Alien Deception and Propaganda Industries. Part 4, Cosmology and Consciousness. Aliens, Angels, and Agendas. The 2 cosmologies behind UFO lore, ancient beings versus modern sci-fi propaganda, Hollow Earth, hidden realms, and occult reinterpretations. The hidden hand behind the stars, spiritual beings versus material explanations, CIA media strategy and mass belief engineering. The false dichotomy of skeptic versus believer. Part Occult proof against the globe. Planes of consciousness, mind as superior to matter, the survival of the soul beyond death, astral projection, telepathy, and non-physical reality. Ancient mystery schools. Hermeticism, Kabbalah, Gnosticism, and the Essenes. The body as a vehicle of consciousness, the Godhead and the chain of emanation. Practical occultism as empirical proof. Faculties of imagination, will, and projection. Developing occult skills as spiritual science. Mind over matter as the true cosmological key. Part 6. Modern parallels and cultural echoes. The entertainment spell, clowns and possession. The archetype of the clown as demonic inheritance, from Harlequin to Grimaldi, Freemasonry and theater. Clown symbolism in pop culture and fashion. Psychological trauma and possession through media. Sports as modern ritual. The religion of sports entertainment. Magnetism, spectacle, and mass hypnosis. The athletic arena as contemporary temple. Part 7. Conclusion. Seeing through the simulation, reclaiming the cosmology of spirit, mind as the architect of reality. Letting go of false belief systems. Do I truly understand what this reality is? Part 1. The 2 cosmologies. 1. The war between matter and mind. Modern civilization was not built on truth. It was built on convenience, on the comfort of believing that what we see is all that exists. The priests of this new order no longer wear robes. They wear lab coats. But the faith is the same, a religion of nothing. We are told that mind emerges from matter, that consciousness is an accident of atoms. Yet not one experiment has ever proven this inversion. All evidence points the other way. That matter itself is an appearance, a projection of awareness into density. The occultists of every age have said as much. The Kabbalist, the Hermetist, the Alchemist, the Adept, all taught that the visible world is the shadow of the invisible. Materialism was not discovered. It was engineered. It is a spell cast upon perception, a psychological enclosure that redefines spirit as illusion and illusion as fact. The child who stares at the sky is told it is infinite emptiness. The initiate knows it is a veil. This is the core divide of our time. Either something created everything, or nothing did. To the modern mind, this is a question of science. To the awakened one, it is a question of sanity. The religion of nothing. The Big Bang is not a discovery. It is a creation myth recited by atheists. It tells us that all of existence burst from nothing, without purpose, will, or intelligence. This is not science, it is sorcery. The magician too declares, "Let there be light." But the magician knows who is speaking. The materialist does not. Every empire invents a cosmology to justify its hierarchy. The medieval church held the earth fixed at the center, because it needed to. Modern technocracy holds it spinning through infinite void because it serves their purpose better. Both systems are maps of control. Both teach dependency on the priesthood. Once theologians, now astrophysicists. To worship nothing is still to worship. It merely means that the object of devotion has become the absence of meaning. Materialism replaced God with entropy, the soul with data, and the heavens with vacuum. In doing so, it fulfilled the oldest dream of the adversary, to separate creation from its creator. The true heresy in this age is to insist that mind is primary, that consciousness does not arise from the machine, but the machine from consciousness. The occultist commits this heresy proudly. The two maps of reality. Every human civilization has built its life upon a map of the cosmos, but there are only two maps that truly matter. The first cosmology is the cosmology of something. It sees the universe as alive, intelligent, and recursive. It understands matter as condensed thought, time as rhythm, and the human being as the living image of divine mind. Its geometry is symbolic: spheres, planes, hierarchies, each representing degrees of vibration, not physical distance. The second cosmology is the cosmology of nothing. It sees the universe as accidental, purposeless, mechanical. It teaches that consciousness is a byproduct of chemical coincidence. Its geometry is numerical and external. Its faith rests in measurement, not meaning. This is the worldview of modern science, corporate atheism, and the cult of space. These two cosmologies are not simply theories, they are psychologies. To live within one or the other is to inhabit a completely different kind of universe. The cost of the wrong faith. The loss of the sacred map is not academic, it is catastrophic. When a civilization denies consciousness, it also denies conscience. When the soul is treated as illusion, all atrocities become permissible. This is the quiet tragedy of modernity. We have replaced metaphysics with marketing, initiation with entertainment, transcendence with consumption. The stars, once signs of divine intelligence, are now brand logos for government space agencies. The cosmos has been emptied of meaning, and then rented back to us through subscriptions, headlines, and high-resolution CGI. But truth does not disappear when denied. It merely hides beneath new symbols. The flat Earth and the globe are both masks. What lies behind them is not shape, but structure, the inner architecture of consciousness itself. The adept's task is not to choose between ancient and modern maps, but to see through both. For only when one perceives that all worlds, physical, astral, mental, arise within the mind of the observer, does the illusion collapse. And the universe, at last, becomes transparent again. The universe is not round or flat. It is reflective. It shows each of us the geometry of our own belief. Part 2. The Empire of Illusion. 5. The Aristotelian Virus. The fall of truth did not begin in the laboratory. It began in the academy. When Aristotle replaced Plato, appearance conquered essence. For Plato, the world was a shadow of divine ideas. For Aristotle, it became a collection of objects. One sought meaning through ascent, the other through dissection. One climbed the ladder of being, the other dismantled it. This shift infected Western civilization like a virus. Aristotle's categories, his obsession with naming, dividing, and quantifying, became the foundation of scholasticism, then science, then bureaucracy, then the modern machine itself. His cosmology turned the living cosmos into a diagram, and man into its measurer. The Hermeticists warned what would follow. Once reality was viewed as dead matter, the living gods of the inner world would retreat, and human beings would begin to worship their own intellect. Thus began the long decline, the descent from gnosis to knowledge, from participation to observation, from soul to system. It was not the telescope that killed the sacred cosmos. It was the frame of mind behind the telescope. The moment we believed the universe to be an object, we made ourselves its object, too. The Venetian Shadow. The globe was not born in a vacuum. It was manufactured by empires that needed distance to rule. When trade became God, infinity became its temple. Venice, mistress of mirrors, merchants, and manipulation, was the first to perfect the art of empire through illusion. Behind its marble facades worked financiers, Jesuits, and secret societies, architects of perception who understood that power flows not from truth, but from consensus. The cosmology of the globe was the perfect psychological weapon, a model that dissolved the sacred center, scattered mankind across an infinite void, and replaced divine order with measurement. Once the earth was a sphere spinning through endless darkness, God could be dismissed as outdated geometry. The Venetians and their later heirs, the Jesuit order, refined this narrative with mathematical grace and ecclesiastical authority. The old flat or domed maps of metaphysics were burned and replaced with spinning spheres in schoolrooms. The heavens, once filled with angels, were rebranded as space. Behind this shift was not only philosophy but economy. Economy. The need to sever man from his spiritual axis, to render him dependent on institutional intermediaries for meaning. The stars themselves were privatized. The Jesuit engineers of reality. The Jesuits understood that belief could be engineered more effectively through education than through force. They seeded the modern scientific worldview while maintaining its priestly structure. They replaced sacraments with syllabi, rituals with research, dogma with data. To the untrained eye, the transition looked like liberation. In truth, it was transmutation, a perfect alchemical inversion. The same hierarchy persisted, only now it spoke in the language of mathematics instead of Latin. The laws of nature became the new commandments, written not on tablets but on blackboards. The scientist inherited the robe of the priest. By the time Copernicus and Newton codified their models, the metaphysical imagination of mankind had already been domesticated. Space was infinite, the soul negligible. The heavens were emptied, not by discovery but by decree. And yet, the occult current never died. It merely went underground, into the Rosicrucian circles, the alchemical orders, the secret lodges that preserved the ancient cosmology of something. While empires worshipped gravity, the adepts studied levity, the rising force of mind that defies the material descent. The empire's new faith. By the 20th century, materialism had become the only acceptable superstition. To question it was to invite ridicule. The institutions of knowledge, universities, governments, space agencies, formed the new trinity of power. They no longer needed to burn heretics, they could simply mock them into silence. The cosmology of control had reached its zenith. Man was reduced to an evolutionary accident, his consciousness a side effect of protein. The stars were sterile spheres, the soul a glitch in the brain, and death the end. This was not enlightenment, it was total disenchantment. But beneath the asphalt of modernity, the roots of the old mystery schools still pulse. They remind us that the empire's map is not the territory, that beyond the bureaucratic illusion lies a cosmos still alive, still intelligent, still responsive to the will of those who dare to remember. The adept sees through both propaganda and nostalgia. He knows that the truth was never flat nor round, but fractal, unfolding from consciousness like a flower in 4 dimensions. He studies not the heavens above, but the heavens within, and finds that they are the same. The greatest lie of empire was not that the earth is round, but that the soul is not the center of it. Part 3. The Science of Deception. NASA, the alchemical theater. The priests of the old world promised salvation after death. The priests of the new world promised escape through the stars. Both were selling heaven, only the marketing changed. NASA was never simply an agency. It was a ritual machine, a modern mystery school for the masses. Born from Operation Paperclip and baptized in Masonic ceremony, it fused military technology with mythic narrative. Its rockets were not only instruments of propulsion, but symbols of ascension. Phallic towers of fire reaching for the eternal beyond. Every launch is a liturgy, the countdown, the ignition, the collective awe of millions staring upward in prayer. The television broadcast is the altar. The astronauts are the initiates. The tax-funded billions are the tithes of a secular religion whose god is velocity and whose heaven is vacuum. The alchemy is psychological. The space program does not merely explore. It defines the limits of imagination. It tells us what is real, what is fiction, and who has authority to declare the difference. The magician's principle remains unchanged. Control perception, and you control reality. They didn't send men to the moon. They sent minds into orbit. NASA's greatest achievement was not technological, but theological. It replaced the celestial hierarchy of angels and aeons with the cold silence of infinite void, and convinced humanity to call that emptiness progress. The spell of the screen. If NASA was the ritual, Hollywood was the mass hypnosis. The camera lens became the new crystal ball, and its magicians, Kubrick, Disney, Spielberg, were high initiates of image. They taught the public to dream in simulations long before computers existed. They turned belief into a programmable state. In every theater, millions entered the darkness willingly, opened their minds, and received the doctrine of spectacle. That image is truth, and truth is negotiable. Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey was not merely film, it was initiation. Disney's cosmic animations were catechisms for children: spherical Earths, spinning galaxies, smiling astronauts. Each was an act of liturgy disguised as entertainment. The effect was total: a population who could no longer tell where myth ended and reality began. When reality itself became cinematic, the true occult purpose was fulfilled. The screen became the globe, and the globe became the screen. Both were glowing orbs of moving light, and both demanded attention, belief, and submission. The religion of science materialism eventually achieved what no empire before it had: a global faith that denies it is a faith. The scientist, once a seeker, became a priest of protocol. The laboratory replaced the temple, the experiment replaced revelation. The white coat became the vestment of rational piety. This transformation was not accidental, it was alchemical. Alchemy always sought to transmute base matter into gold. Modern science achieved this by transmuting spirit into matter. It reduced every mystery to mechanism, every miracle to math, every divine principle to a chemical process. And in doing so, it discovered not truth but control. The new Trinity, data, funding, consensus, replaced Father, Son, and Spirit. To question the model is blasphemy. To deny the equations is heresy. Peer review became confession. Reproducibility became doctrine. Yet behind the curtain of objectivity lies the same old theater of power: grants, governments, and carefully curated narratives of progress. Science, when detached from metaphysics, becomes sorcery without soul, pure will operating without wisdom. It can split atoms but cannot mend hearts. It can measure the universe but not explain the meaning of one tear. This is the tragedy of the rational age. It has mastered the machinery of existence while forgetting the reason to exist at all. The Great Disenchantment. Once, humanity gazed upon the stars and saw divinity. Now we stare at screens and see algorithms. The telescope has become a mirror reflecting our own emptiness. But illusion cannot sustain itself indefinitely. Every spell has a half-life. And as the Empire's cosmology begins to crack, the return of the occult, the hidden truth, becomes inevitable. Those who once laughed at the mystic now seek him. Those who mocked the sacred now sense the hunger for it in their own hollow hearts. And those who believed they lived on a spinning rock in endless space now begin to suspect that the entire drama, planet, sky, and story, was projected for their initiation. The purpose of deception is not only control, it is catalysis. When the soul finally sees through illusion, it awakens not just to the fraud of the world, but to the infinite creative power that made the illusion possible in the first place. For the wise, the lie becomes the teacher. For the initiated, the false globe becomes the first step back to the true cosmos. Science gave us the power of gods, but not the wisdom to wield it. That wisdom returns only when we remember that the experimenter and the experiment are one. Part 4. The Hidden Cosmology of Spirit 13. Mind is the true medium. Everything begins where science refuses to look, within. The cosmos is not a container of matter, but a field of consciousness, endlessly self-reflecting. What we call space is the pause between thoughts. What we call time is the rhythm by which awareness dreams itself into sequence. The mystics of every civilization already mapped this. Reality as layered vibration. Each plane denser than the one above, yet made of the same primal light. The physical world is only the crust of this spectrum, a crystallized echo of subtler realms. To the unawakened, consciousness appears trapped inside the brain. To the adept, the brain is the interface inside consciousness. Thought does not arise from neurons. Neurons are the residue of thought. When one finally sees that the mind is not in the world, but the world in the mind, the spell of distance ends. Heaven and earth, spirit and matter, life and death, all are modes of attention within a single awareness looking at itself through infinite mirrors. The architecture of the planes. The ancients spoke in symbols because geometry is the language of the soul. Every plane is a frequency of light, each octave sustaining the next. The physical plane, the visible projection, slowest vibration, where consciousness condenses into matter. The etheric, blueprint of form, matrix of energy lines and subtle motion. The astral, realm of emotion, dream and archetype, the workshop of imagination. The mental, domain of ideas, mathematics, philosophy, the architect's table of reality. The causal, the seed field, where will and karma weave destiny. the spiritual, luminous unity. All differences collapse into one presence. The ladder of planes is not a staircase to climb, but a lens to clear. Every rung already exists within us, coiled like frequencies in a single note. To ascend is to de-densify perception, to refine vibration until the invisible becomes obvious. The ladder of souls. All beings are sparks of the same central fire, differentiated only by awareness. Minerals sleep, plants dream, animals feel, humans think, and the adept knows. Evolution is not biological, it is spiritual memory. Each incarnation is a classroom, each experience a letter in the language of awakening. The soul descends through matter to learn limitation, then rises again through knowledge, compassion, and mastery of will. This is the true meaning of as above, so below, the same light descending and reascending through itself. When Hermes spoke of the great work, he meant the conscious completion of this cycle, to remember what one has always been, and to become it deliberately. To build the philosopher's stone is not to transmute lead into gold, but ego into soul, and soul into spirit. Hermetic and Kabbalistic keys. The Kabbalah's tree of life and the Hermetic chain of being are two renderings of the same cosmic circuitry. Each sephira or sphere represents a state of consciousness, each path a current of energy linking them. When the initiate meditates upon these correspondences, he is not learning symbols, he is learning the circuitry of his own mind. The true temple is not built of stone, but of pattern. Ritual, mantra, geometry, and sound are tools to align the lower frequencies of self with the higher harmonics of source. The magus is a technician of resonance, tuning his inner instrument until it plays in unison with the divine chord. The return of the living cosmos. When consciousness remembers itself, the world awakens with it. Mountains breathe. Stars speak. Every object becomes a messenger of meaning. The occultist no longer seeks miracles. He recognizes that existence itself is miraculous. This is the antithesis of the modern void. The universe is not an accident expanding into darkness. It is a living organism flowering towards self-realization. Each of us is a petal on that bloom, carrying the fragrance of the infinite. And so, the ancient cosmology returns, not as superstition, but as revelation renewed. Science dissects the body of God, the occultist restores its soul. Both are needed, but only one remembers why. To know the planes is to know oneself. The stars are not above us. They are the sparks within remembering how to shine. Part 5, Occult Verification 18. The Experimental Adept. The final proof of any cosmology is not belief but experience. Philosophy ends where practice begins. The occult tradition does not ask for faith, it demands participation. To know the truth of consciousness, one must test it. In meditation, in ritual, in the crucible of one's own perception. The adept is not a theorist. He is an experimenter in light, observing, directing, and refining the currents of mind until knowledge becomes power, and power becomes understanding. Every occult exercise, from breath control to visualization, is an experiment in causal mechanics. When you focus attention, the field obeys. When you alter imagination, the body responds. When you change inner vibration, outer circumstances reorganize. The proof is not metaphoric, it is measurable, though not by instruments of matter, only by instruments of awareness. The scientist isolates matter to observe it. The magician isolates self to dissolve it. In both cases, observation changes the observed, but the occultist knows why. Imagination and will as instruments. The true laboratory of magic contains no equipment. Its apparatus is the psyche itself. Imagination is the shaping force. Will is the current that animates the form. Imagination is not make-believe. It is the matrix of becoming, the pre-physical domain from which all phenomena emerge. Every invention, every empire, every emotion began as image. When guided by will, imagination becomes creation. When unguided, it becomes chaos. Will is the axis of being, the flame of decision through which consciousness chooses direction. It does not fight against matter, it commands it by resonance. To strengthen will is to align intention with the harmonic of the higher planes. When will and imagination are synchronized, the adept can shape probability itself. This is not superstition, it is the original science. All laws of attraction, all quantum mysticism, are half-remembered echoes of this deeper truth. Consciousness is causal. When you think, you sculpt. When you feel, you charge the sculpture with life. When you act with clarity, the invisible becomes visible. The silence between thoughts. Every occult discipline ultimately returns to the same portal: silence. Between the rise and fall of thought lies the unconditioned awareness that sustains all worlds. It is not absence, it is origin. To enter it is to dissolve identity and remember source directly. Meditation, prayer, ritual, all are techniques for re entering this stillness consciously. In that stillness, reality reveals its machinery: waves of perception, threads of causation, currents of light weaving experience. The adept learns to stand between these currents, neither swept away by the material nor dissolved in the mystical, but balanced, lucid, awake. There, miracles become natural law, and natural law becomes miracle. The great work of verification. The great work is not the accumulation of secret knowledge, it is the integration of opposites. Spirit and matter, masculine and feminine, light and shadow, all fuse into one awareness when the experiment succeeds. This is the stone of the alchemists, the reborn self beyond polarity. Verification comes not from books or orders, but from transformation itself. When the adept sees that every motion of the world is a mirror of his inner state, he knows the doctrine is true. The planets revolve because consciousness revolves. Creation continues because awareness loves to know itself through change. In that realization, the illusion of separation ends. The magician becomes the experiment becomes revelation, and the revelation becomes peace. He who experiments upon his own consciousness becomes the philosopher's stone he once sought to build. Part 6. The Inverted World 22. The Clown and the Crown. When a culture banishes the sacred, it does not disappear, it mutates. The god becomes the jester, the priest becomes the performer, the temple becomes the stage. The clown is the high priest of inversion, the mock king who reveals by ridicule what cannot be spoken in reverence. From the masked tricksters of Dionysian theater to the painted mimes of the medieval fairs, the clown has always been the shadow of the Hierophant. He exposes hypocrisy, but also intoxicates. He frees the crowd from shame, only to trap them in cynicism. Modern civilization made him its mascot. Television, pop music, fashion, politics, every arena now parades its fools, grinning through despair. The more meaningless life becomes, the wider the smile. This is the liturgy of laughter, a mass exorcism that never completes because it mocks what it secretly longs to remember. When the King of Heaven was forgotten, the kingdom crowned the clown. The ritual of spectacle. The ancients gathered in temples to witness the descent of spirit. We gather in arenas to witness distraction. The light that once shone from stained glass now flickers from screens. The choir has become the crowd, chanting slogans, waving banners, worshipping momentum. Every major sport is a ritual drama: duality, conflict, sacrifice, and resurrection played out in synthetic grass. The athletes are avatars of archetype: Mars, Mercury, Hercules, while the spectators feed the egregore with adoration and anger. The scoreboard is the altar. The replay is the resurrection. This is not entertainment, it is energy management. Emotion that might awaken consciousness is siphoned into endless loops of victory and defeat, ensuring that transcendence remains external, never inward. The stadium is the modern cathedral of containment. Media as mass possession. What ancient sorcerers accomplished with sigils and smoke, modern networks achieve with light and sound. The broadcast is the new pentagram. Every device is a portal. Every notification a miniature invocation demanding attention. That most sacred currency of all. To the occultist, possession is not always demonic. It is any state in which one's will is displaced by another's vibration. By that definition, billions are possessed, not by spirits, but by systems. Their dreams are scripted, their outrage scheduled, their identities algorithmically adjusted. The magician's antidote is simple but severe. Turn off the current. Withdraw the gaze. Reclaim the attention that powers the collective hallucination. Only then does the inner light, long drowned by screens, begin to reassert its sovereignty. The alchemy of inversion. Inversion is not purely evil. It is educational. To see holiness mocked is to remember that holiness exists. To watch truth crucified nightly on glowing crosses of entertainment is to feel the hunger for resurrection. Every dark age performs this same grim alchemy. What was sacred becomes spectacle. What was initiation becomes parody. Yet within parody hides potential. When the clown tires of laughter, he becomes the prophet again. When the spectacle collapses, silence returns. And silence restores the voice of the real. Thus, the adept does not flee the world's insanity. He studies it as one studies a dream. He recognizes every inversion as a glyph in the larger great work, a shadow outlining the shape of the returning light. When all the world became a circus, the wise remembered that the tent itself was pitched inside the mind of God. Part 7. The Return of the Real 26. Seeing through the simulation, every lie exhausts itself. Every illusion, no matter how perfect, decays beneath the weight of its own maintenance. The global dream, the mechanical universe, the accidental life, the infinite void, has begun to crack. Even the hypnotized feel it, the subtle dissonance between what is shown and what is known. The simulation was never digital. It was psychological. The world we experience is the feedback loop of collective belief projected upon the screen of consciousness. Matter, media, government, history, all of it behaves like code because it is code. Language condensed into perception. To see through the simulation is not to escape it, but to remember that you wrote it. Every symbol, every rule, every recurring pattern is self-authored in the long recursion of consciousness exploring itself. When this is seen, paranoia dissolves into purpose. The same mechanism that enslaved humanity now becomes the stairway to awakening. The magus smiles because he understands. The system was never his enemy, only his initiation. The collapse of false heavens. The cosmology of nothing collapses when confronted with direct awareness. Its physics fail, its gods die, its measurements blur. Space and time dissolve into a single presence that has always been here. This is the apocalypse, not destruction but unveiling. The veils of science, religion, and entertainment tear in synchrony, revealing the same silent brilliance behind them all. That light is not out there. It is the attention reading these words, the awareness looking through every eye. It needs no telescope, no savior, no signal from the stars. It simply wakes up, and in that awakening, the entire dream reorders around it. The adept calls this the Great Recollection. Mystics call it gnosis. Children call it home. Reclaiming the center. The true earth has no edges and no orbit. It exists wherever consciousness stands awake within itself. Every being is the axis mundi, the pillar connecting the planes, the bridge between invisible and visible. When enough awaken to this, geography itself becomes irrelevant. Empires cannot survive in a world of sovereign minds. Their borders dissolve, their narratives disintegrate, their symbols lose charge. The center returns to where it always was, the human heart. And the heart, once known as metaphor, is revealed as engine, the electromagnetic sun within that orders the microcosm. To reclaim the center is to reverse the long exile from spirit. It is to stand still in the turning world and feel the universe turn within you. It is to know beyond belief that every point of awareness is a holy of holies, and that creation was never elsewhere. The human as hieroglyph. The adept's final realization is simple. The human form itself is scripture. Every organ, every gesture, every pulse encodes the story of the cosmos condensed into flesh. The spine is the tree of life, the breath, the rhythm of worlds, the eyes, twin suns reflecting eternity. When man remembers what he is, the universe regains its purpose, a mirror through which God contemplates himself.